Hello everyone, so today I'm going to show you how to make a wire rosary. It looks like this. This is what the finished product will look like. It has wire strung through it and it has little clasps on each joint here where the wire comes together to close it off. I use silver spacer beads and then seed beads in between in order to add the extra space. So I'm going to show you how to do that using a new tool that I picked up that makes it so much easier than it used to be when I made these rosaries. But this is what I'm going to be showing you today. Okay, to make this rosary, the first thing you need is 59 of the beads that you're going to use for the rosary. Instead of using a separate fancier bead for the Our Father or Pater beads, I'm just going to use all in this lavender color. So these are the beads that I'll be using for the Hail Marys and the Our Fathers. And you'll also need some of these beads. These are little seed beads. I use them at the end, and I sometimes use them in the space between the decades. So like right here, because I'm laying out the rosary bead pieces right now. And then I'm also going to put these beads. They're silver, they're balls, they're uniform in shape. I'm going to have them as the spacer beads between each bead in the decade. And I'm considering also using them between each decade with the Our Father, but we're going to see how it looks as I lay it out. So I'm going to lay out everything first before I string it onto the wire. For the wire that I'm going to be stringing the rosary on, I'm going to use this wire, and it's a 49 strand wire, so it's 49 strands and then it's covered, and so that makes it for an extra strong, durable wire rosary. And for this rosary I'm going to try something new. I got this Step Crimper. So this tool is supposed to make it really easy. You only have to press down once, as opposed to another crimper tool that I have that you have to press it down, then shift the piece over and press it again in order to close it. So it's supposed to do it all in one shot. So I'm going to try this out with this project to see how this works. If it works as well as it claims, then this is going to be a regular tool for me when I do wire rosaries. The final two pieces that I'll be using for this rosary are the crucifix that you see on the right here and the miraculous medal of Mary that's on the left. So I'm going to get stringing this together. So the first thing to do is line up all your beads in the pattern that you want the rosary arranged in. Okay, now that I've taken each of the round silver beads and spaced them between the lavender beads, I put one on either side of the Our Father beads to accent the Our Father bead, and then I'm going to put the silver seed beads in between each decade. So when I get that done, I'll show that. Okay, now that I have it all laid out, I am going to go ahead and pull out the wire and string all these onto it. I will actually leave the wire on the little spool that it comes off of, so that way I don't have to worry about anything sliding off the opposite end. I'll show you that in a minute. Okay, so one of the things you're going to want to do is pull out a decent bit of the string. So as you can see here, maybe, I have pulled out a decent bit of the wire, and I'm leaving it connected so that way the beads will stop at the spool, and if I cut it, then all the beads will just fall off the other end unless I have a bead clamp on it. And since I don't have a bead clamp, I just leave this string connected on the spool so that way it will stop at the spool and not fall off. So now that I'm happy with my pattern, I'm starting to string everything on, because pretty much once you've strung it on, if you're not happy with your pattern and you realize it, you have to take everything off in order to get that spot, because it's not like with the linked ones where you can just undo a link and insert something in between. Once you have this on, it's on. Since stringing the beads on takes a little bit of time and is a bit on the time-consuming side, I'm fast-forwarding some of the videos so that you don't have to sit and watch the entire process. You can watch it sped up, which is much more efficient. Okay, so I come across this piece here, and it's not completely round, so I'm going to trade it out for another bead that I have nearby that isn't flattened on the end. And to give you an idea of the progress that I've made so far. Okay, so this is the first decade of the rosary that's strung on now. So I'm just pausing to show you the work that I've done, and then I'm going to continue on to the next 4 decades. Okay, and this is the progress I have so far. You can see the beads at the end here. And so far I have 2 decades on and the start of a 3rd decade. So I'm going to be continuing with the 3rd decade, and I'll show you the results as I get closer to finished. At this point, I'm just putting on the last of the beads for the final decade, and after I get done, I always go back and count all the beads and make sure that I have all 5 decades on and that I didn't miss any spots and that all the beads and spacer beads are exactly where they should be. So this is the new tool I was telling you about. It's a one-step crimper. So basically just in one squeeze you can crimp the little tubes on, which seal the ends. And it used to take 2 different steps on a tool, and it wasn't always successful. So sometimes the little pieces would break and I'd have to crush them the rest of the way off and then redo it again. On the back side it shows the instructions on how to use it, how to lay the piece perfectly in so that way it's not too far to the left or too far to the right, and how you squeeze it down in order to crimp the crimper bead in order to seal off the wire. As I was opening up the package, I wanted to make sure and be careful because since it has the instructions in the back, I did not want the instructions on how to use this tool to get destroyed. So as you can see, I'm trying to be careful and make sure I open it up and get the tool out, but also leave the back cardboard part intact as I do it. This second part that I'm trying to open up is the part where they had the container of the crimper beads sealed in. They had that separate from the tool itself, so I had to try and get that out of there on its own, which wasn't terribly difficult, but it did make up for a moment of pause for me. So this is the container with the little beads that are used for the crimping beads, and basically it clamps the 2 pieces of wire together and seals it off so that way the beads won't go sliding off. So this is actually poured out 4 beads because that's roughly what I'll need to complete the rosary. And I'm sticking them down in the little area here where I hold the beads, and I'll grab 1 bead and string it onto the wire, and then I'll string the wire through the station corner and put the wire back through that crimping bead and seal it with the tool. And this is much, much easier, I think, than the method that I was using before, which required me to use a different tool and then crimp and then lift and then mash the crimped piece over. So we'll see how efficient this is. Okay, this is the part where I've got the wire strung through the crimper bead, the station, and back through the crimper bead, and I'm setting it up in the tool. And like I said before, I have to get the crimper bead set just right into the middle of the crimper tool. So it's going to take me a moment since this is the first time I've used this particular tool. I want to make sure I have the crimper bead slid down and the wire pulled reasonably tight so there's only a little bit of give, only a little bit of slack between where the beads stop and where the crimping bead is and the loop for the station. So I just squeeze down on the handle and then it crimps the bead, and then I take it out of the crimping tool once I have it crimped. That takes a little bit of work because, like I said, I'm still just learning to use this tool. Okay, so I didn't press down quite hard enough to crimp it, and I realized that I didn't quite like the positioning, so I tightened the wire a little bit and pushed the crimping bead down further, and now I'm pressing down with the full force in order to crimp the bead and mash it down. There you can see the sort of pop where it crushes the bead and then it folds over and pushes that together so it finishes off the crimping for the bead there. And now I get to try and get it back out again. So as you can see, that little piece there is the crimping bead. That's what holds the two wires secure together so that the loose end doesn't slip out. And then after that, I'm going to take and feed all the beads over that loose wire so that they're both the original wire and the loose wire are tucked up underneath the beads to keep them secure so they don't get loose in case it were to pull out for some reason. Okay, so the next step is, now that I've got it clamped over on that side, is to pull out some extra wire and then to take my wire cutter tool and to clip it, leaving enough space to string it through and feed the wire back up the beads to make sure I have enough length, because nothing like cutting it, having too little length, and then having a hard time clamping everything. So I've got that clipped, so now I have this loose end. So I'm going to get another one of these clamping beads and I'm going to put the wire through it and then string it through the other part of the Miraculous Medal of Mary station and swing it back through here, and then I'm going to put it into the clamper piece like I did with the last one and clamp this down. So I'm going to try and show you a little bit better than I did last time, if possible, how to use the clamping tool. Okay. So I'm going to press this piece up like this and situate this in the middle. This might take a moment because since I'm new to this tool, it takes a little bit to get the hang of it, but it's already been easier than the other tool that I used to use for this. Okay. Now, a key thing in the instructions is it wants me to get this piece evenly spaced between the grooves. Okay, now if you can see, I have the piece in the middle there. See if it shows. I have it in the middle of the space, so not too much to the left or to the right. And I have the wire, so it's on either side like the directions show. I'm going to squeeze it down. And then it just clamps it. Let's see how that turned out. Yeah, I clamped it rather nicely there. So I think it looks good. I'm going to test it real quick. Yep, pulling on it, it seems to hold. So I'm going to feed this wire back up here, and I get to a point where if there's a little too much wire, I'll just clip that part off. Okay, so at this point, this is what I was talking about feeding the wire up. I'm taking the wire in and inserting it back through the beads to secure the rosary, and at the same time hide the wire. There we go. And so this makes the rosary a little bit more secure, while at the same time disguising the wire. So that way it's just hidden underneath the beads. So take this up a few more. This is actually where it comes in handy to have left a little slack between the beads, so that way as I'm threading it through, I can push them apart slightly in order to feed the wire through the beads, as opposed to having them locked really tight next to each other, which would make it harder to feed this through. few more beads, and then I might trim it to make it just a little bit shorter, because that I think will be sufficient length. I also want to leave enough slack of wire because I have personally owned wire rosaries, not one that I've made, but one that a friend made for me, and eventually the clamp came off of it. It was probably because it was much heavier beads than this, and the clamp came off, but there was not enough slack of the wire for me to really fix it, so I'm going to end up transforming that one into a chain-based rosary at some point, since I still have all the beads for it, because it was a really gorgeous rosary. It's just that it came apart. Okay, so now as you can see, I have fed all the wire up on both sides. Both sides have been clamped, and now I'm going to move on to making this end part here that'll have the crucifix on it. Okay, so at this point I'm going to start working on the last part of the rosary. So I'm going to take this wire and string the bead on. That will be the clamp piece. And then string that through there. And I'm going to go ahead and put this through and do this part on right now, as opposed to waiting till after I have this piece made. I still have the rest of the wire connected to the spool. So I'm going to clamp this, and then I'll figure out roughly how much of the wire I need to clip it off, but right now, since I'm clamping this on, I'm not cutting it just yet. So I've got the clamp bead on there, as you can see, and I'm going to use the tool to clamp this on. Fit it right there in the middle. Make sure I have the wire tight through there. And have the bead in the middle, because according to the instructions, the bead needs to sit rather perfectly in the middle to clamp correctly. That looked like it wasn't quite tight enough. There we go. And then go ahead and push down. And free everything now from the tool. And as you can see, it clamped down there. And now I'm going to pull out some of the wire from the spool. I want enough to put all the beads on and clamp from the other end, so I'm going to pull out probably, I'd say 6 or 7 inches, which is probably far more than actually needs to be on it, but I want to leave extra for when I have to fold back over and do the clamping piece and not run out of wire. Go. So now I'll go ahead and string on the beads. Okay, so now I'm going to grab a bead and string it onto this, and I'm going to try and get it over that second wire, because that's how it will be hidden. Not all the seed beads have the same sized opening, so sometimes you may have to try a few in order to get one that goes over the second wire, just like that there. So I really want to have that second wire hidden, and not all the seed beads will always have the same hole opening because they're such small beads. Okay, now there's 2. And I'm going to grab that one, because it looks like it might have a bigger hole than some of the other ones. So I have those 3 beads on there. Try to get the focus in. And now I'm going to put one of the silver spacer beads on there. So I'm going to have this part a little bit more ornate than Okay, in this last piece here, you'll see where I'm stringing on the beads to that very bottom part of the rosary. I just put on the Our Father, and that'll be followed by the seed beads, and then an end bead, and then the Hail Marys. What makes this part different from the rest of the rosary is that I'm going to be putting the silver ball beads at the end of the Hail Marys and not just on either side of the Our Father beads. Okay, so I'm putting on the last of the beads, reviewing it, and then after I get done reviewing it, I'll go ahead and put the bead for the crimper part on, and I'll get ready to put the crucifix on. So this is just reviewing to make sure that I've got all the beads on, that they're correct in the correct number in the right order, because once you put that crimper bead on, it's pretty much done. Okay, this is that last part where I'm putting on the crimper bead and I'm going to put the crucifix on. I'll actually go sideways instead of long ways, so that way the crucifix hangs properly on the rosary. You might notice a little bit of a light change because I did the video over 2 days, and this last part I actually did at night, so I didn't have the natural light streaming through the window that I did in the other parts of the video. But yeah, this is the last part here. I just put the crimper bead on, and I'm using the crimper tool to crimp it. Okay, so in this last part, after having put the crimping bead on, I'm now stringing the wire back up the beads in the rosary. This is to keep the wire secure and to make sure that if at any point the crimping bead were to come off, be broken off somehow, that this part could be redone because there's enough wire length in order to do it. If there's not enough wire, it makes it really hard to fix. And I'm only doing this because, like I said, I have a rosary that was given to me that had crimping beads on it, and the crimping bead eventually came off, and there wasn't enough length really to just put another crimping bead on it. So I'm just stringing the wire back up the beads to finish this part off. And so this is just one last look of the completed rosary and that last part that I did. As you can see here, the crucifix on the bottom secured with the crimp bead. So this is the final product, the rosary, lavender beads, silver spacing beads, the miraculous metal station, and then more beads as it goes down to the crucifix here. So if you like this video, please click like down at the bottom. If you like this video and you'd like to see more of my videos, then click subscribe down at the bottom, and if you click on the little bell, it'll send you a reminder notice whenever I put a new video up. And I'm also going to be talking about a giveaway contest I'm going to be having in an upcoming video, so please continue to watch my videos and click like and subscribe. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next video.